And we are back, and we just finished watching 2023's El Conde, which translates to The Count from Spanish to English. This is from 2023, rated R, with a runtime of 1 hour and 50 minutes. This is currently streaming on Netflix and comes to us from director Pablo Larraín, with writing credits to Pablo Larraín and Guillermo Calderón. This is tagged as comedy fantasy history, but I would also add a little horror, since our main protagonist is in fact a vampire.
Yeah, very light. I mean, there's some seriously gory bits in it.
Yeah.
But they kind of feel out of place.
Yes,
like
and
if they would have kept the theme up, maybe they wouldn't have seemed so out of place. But they're like when he kills that prostitute in the revolutionary France times or whatever, that was pretty gruesome. They really showed that a lot.
Yeah.
It was worse than any of the other killings, I think.
Yeah.
Like that was really focused on. But the rest of the film, yeah, the killings, there's blood and there's people getting stabbed and stuff, but a couple of beheadings. But it's not like that level. Like that was really gruesome.
Gruesome, yeah.
Yeah. But then again, that sort of seems to be a theme with this film as far as being a little bit all over the place.
Yes, I was going to say, in the month of October, now that we're into October, we're going to try to do our horror movies. I picked this because of the whole vampire thing, but this is more of like a satire, I think. It's definitely, it's not subtle in equating power to vampirism, especially with, I guess, political leaders. In this case, El Conde is based off of Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet, who reigned in terror.
Well, it's not based off him. It's supposed to be him.
It's supposed to be him. But it's, I mean, true. Yeah, because they got the wife's name, the kids, the 5 kids and stuff. So, yeah, I guess.
It was basically a fictionalized account of Pinochet's life, except instead of just being a normal guy, he was an immortal vampire who grew up during the French Revolution and carried on and just liked being in charge or something I guess.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's interesting because then when we first dive into the story, he wants to die.
Yeah.
He wants to die.
He's ready to die.
Yeah, he's lost his will to live. His wife and children all know that he is an immortal. But they aren't. They aren't. Because he wanted his kids to have a normal life, and he didn't want to do that to his wife. Although he has a manservant who I guess served under him, who he turned, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, to me, this film started out very strong, and then it just fell into disarray. It was just
where did you think it fell into disarray?
I think when the nun showed up, Carmen.
That's early.
Yeah. It started not making a lot of sense. I don't know
if I agree with that.
Okay, was that marching band there?
I don't know. I guess so, because then they get up and they're dancing, right? So, and everyone's looking in that direction, so I'm assuming yes.
It just doesn't make any sense.
So, I mean, that's not the thing that... Okay, so the only thing that I agree with you is that it was too long. I think if this had been a shorter film...
How long was this movie?
An hour and 51 minutes. It is almost 2 hours.
You know what? I think I've grown accustomed to just 2-hour movies.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. It felt long.
I didn't even like this one, really, and the length of the film didn't bother me. I was just sort of baffled as to what the hell was going on and why these characters...
Well, I think it's supposed to be...
The characters were just terrible.
Well, I think that's the point.
No, I don't mean they're terrible people. I mean, they were just, their motivations just sort of changed and varied throughout the movie. And it wasn't even like, oh, this is a character arc. It was just, no, it's just, people are just acting weird. Like, why? Like, the nun was just getting everybody to tell her everything. And she wasn't like being subtle or anything. She was just like, she was basically saying, you're scum, you're thieves. This is what you're doing. And they were just like, yes.
I think, okay, so I think that in order to really appreciate this film, you kind of have to know a little bit of the history of Chile, what happened with Allende, who was the leftist leader prior to the military coup that happened in 73. So obviously growing up in a Hispanic household, my parents were from Ecuador. So this stuff was very present in our lives. The news of countries in South America was very important and present in our lives. So when all of this stuff went down, I was still a child or an infant. I think this happened in September of 73. And this was a huge, huge deal. I mean, they basically took out an entire government, and it came to light years later that they had been, I guess, privately funded by the U.S. government to remove Allende, who was, again, like this leftist leaning. He was for unions and all this other stuff, and he made all these there was like, I think the day that they took the presidential palace, he gave like this speech basically like, I'll either serve out my term or they'll take me out feet first. And that's basically what happened. I think originally they said it was suicide, that he committed suicide, but that's always been a point of controversy because some people don't believe that. I personally don't believe that either. I could be wrong. I wasn't there, but just from all the news accounts that we were fed, I don't think that was true. But that aside, I think the film does a really, really great job of equating, again, these political persons, because there's more than one, right? There's more than one political person in this, in the vein of vampirism. And I think that Carmen, the accountant / exorcist nun, is also, she goes there with these good intentions, but she's also part of this system, because why is she there? She's there to steal money. She's basically there to steal money to then bring back to the church, which is also this sort of mafioso organization that covers for pedophile priests. And I mean, it's like,
well, they don't go into any of that.
They never go into any of that, but you can equate like these systems of power that basically abuse and aren't really there for the people. I mean, for whatever reason, Pinochet took over from Allende. I mean, some people, it's funny, right? In retrospect, some people look at him favorably, like, oh, you know, he got rid of those communists and this, that, and the other thing. But he killed thousands of people. He had thousands of people killed. I mean, for years, the women would gather in La Plaza with their signs like, my son is missing, my daughter is missing, because all these left-leaning activists were murdered. They were rounded up like criminals and just murdered because they spoke out against the government, because they spoke out against what was happening in their own country. Being raised here, or being born and raised here, sometimes you forget that there is a huge world, and the things that we face are not the things that other people face. And some of those things are super hardcore. Again, like being dragged out of your house in the middle of the night and just executed.
Yeah.
Just because you said that the ruler of the country is an animal. He's a criminal. He's a thief. And that's another thing that's really funny in here. He
takes great offense to being called a thief, but yes, being a murderer is fine.
Being a murderer is fine. But yes, being labeled a thief was like the biggest insult ever.
Yeah. I don't know any of this stuff. When growing up in my house, believe it or not, politics was never talked about.
It's so funny because that's all your dad wants to talk about. That's all my dad and mom
talk about now. But when I was a kid, it was basically, what are the Yankees doing? And what new monster movie is coming out?
Are we going to go see? Yes.
Yeah, that was it. And my mom was just like, we should watch more ballet and opera. I don't know how they stayed together.
What did you think of... Okay, so I could tell at one point that you were just like completely like, what happened here? And I was
because
like,
I said, it started off strong and like, okay, it's a good setup. They're building up this thing. Oh, okay, it's interesting with the nun and the children, and let's see how this all resolves of itself. But then it just, I don't know, the characters just stopped being believable. They just became like almost like caricatures of something, and it just really lost me at that point. I think because I had like at some point I'm like upset. I'm accepting of just how weird the nun Carmen, right?
Carmen, yeah.
weird how she's interacting with these people. There's one point where they're all together and she basically just says, I'm going to expose everything. You're going to hate each other.
See, that scene I thought was in here.
That's what I mean. I don't know. Okay, you're taking liberties with real versus imagined, and you're letting me decide what's what. Like, is the marching band there? Or is this really being said? But even throughout all of that, you get this impression that she seems to be a very matter of fact person. The reason why she was hired because she's like great at numbers, and there's something about her. And then there's that one scene where she's interviewing Fyodor or Fyodor, whatever his name is, the butler, and she's doing the whole matter of fact thing, and then suddenly she's terrified.
Right.
And it was just like, where did that come from?
Right. Yeah. That seemed out of place for her character, because up until that point, she had been like even keeled and whatever.
It wasn't like she was surprised that he was a vampire.
Right. She knew.
Like everybody knows that Pinochet and the butler are vampires.
Yeah.
This is not a secret in the movie.
Yeah.
And yet somehow now suddenly she's just scared because he talks about, I like torturing people. The best part of torturing people isn't the torturing, it's the anticipation of the torturing, because people's minds do more harm than all the torturing in the world. Creepy. Fyodor's, he's a creepy guy. He's very...
I disagree on that, but okay.
He's
no, he did say that, but I was just saying I agree to disagree with that statement.
But. Okay, yeah. He's a creepy guy. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
But...
You were talking about that sequence where she's like, all of a sudden it flips, and he has the upper hand now.
Yeah, and it didn't make sense to me. And then I mean, Pinochet's flip where he doesn't want to die anymore, I guess, kind of makes sense because for some reason he's falling in love with Carmen.
Yeah,
So now I guess he wants to be young, and he decides he's going to go out, and it's never really explained why Fyodor, whatever the hell his name is, the butler, I think they said that he went out and started killing people because he wanted the children to come.
Right, because ultimately, so Fyodor was like this loyalist to Pinochet, right? Pinochet was tired. He even says in the beginning to the wife, he's like, I don't want to live another 250 years. This is BS. I just don't know how to die for some reason. So Fyodor's plan was to bring the kids and have them just completely destroy the father. And in one sequence, you think that's going to happen, but then it doesn't. So his plan was to have them come and have them kill the father.
Well, their plan wasn't to kill the dad. Their plan was to bring in the exorcist who was going to get the devil out of her dad, and then he would die of natural causes, I guess.
But also to find where this money is.
She was like
and it seemed like Pinochet's memory. Remember that scene when they're at the table and he's like, I don't know. He kept saying, I don't know. Yeah. He's like, there's stuff in the basement, but I don't know what it is. And you guys can have it all. Mm-hmm. And then there's the wife, Lucia, she's just like Lady Macbeth. She comes across as this sweet old lady, but she's not. She's power hungry. She's money hungry. She's almost jealous. So I think another thing I want to tag is the wife, how there's something very Lady Macbeth-ish about her. She's greedy. She's jealous. She wants power. She wants all these accolades. She desperately wants them from her husband, but her husband doesn't seem to want to give them to her for whatever reason. So she has this affair with the butler, and he's willing to do it. And it's interesting because then Pinochet, I guess we're speaking to spoilers here.
We've already spoiled the hell out of this movie.
Yeah. It's obviously satire based on things that really happened. I mean, I think in the beginning you see that guy spit on the coffin and say murderer. Yeah. Like that, I think that actually happened. What I was going to say is that Pinochet then turns Carmen, which was interesting. And I want to also call attention to a conversation that Fyodor had with Lucia, the wife. And he basically said somebody doesn't want him to die, I guess. And that person was sort of keeping him alive.
Yeah, I guess they were putting blood in the food.
That was the wife.
Yeah.
Right, because he calls her out on it. He's like, I know you're putting blood in this food to keep me going. Mm-hmm. And you see that scene towards the beginning where she kind of dumps whatever Fyodor was making into like a bottle.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't in the food because he also says we have a cup of brandy every night before we go to bed. I'm guessing she just put some in the brandy.
Yeah. I thought it was for her, but it was for him.
Yeah, I mean, she has no use for it at all.
Right. It wouldn't do anything unless she was turned.
Yeah.
Right. Which, for whatever reason, he wouldn't turn her. But then the young girl comes, and I guess...
Well, he instantly fell in love with her, and there you go. Love at first sight. That's a hallmark of poor writing. But it wasn't really low, because she's working a job. She's working an angle.
Right. She's like the femme fatale.
She was sort of like the church set her up to be sort of like a sacrificial lamb because they knew she was going to have to do things to accomplish this mission.
Right.
And I guess that was basically becoming a vampire.
Or by whatever means necessary. But I mean, but it also felt like she sort of also reciprocated his feelings.
Did she?
I think so, because
when he had his little dress up fantasy, she basically was just like, all right, I'm gonna kill you.
But before that, before he turns her, she basically says, do it. And then she goes out and she's doing her whole aerial thing, and when she comes back, they embrace. And then the next thing you see is, I guess, they're in bed, and then Pinochet's mother comes in to bust it up. So I wondered if she also, because I think that it's okay. So it's interesting how through the lens of time, there's sort of like this mythos. Like I was saying before, there are people in Chile that still look at him and revere him, even though he was a monster. He had people murdered. He had thousands and thousands of people murdered and tortured.
Yeah. And I got to, and that's another reason why I dislike this, because
the good guys come, the bad guys come out on top, right?
There's no comeuppance for him at all. Zero. No. Everybody's kissing his ass the entire film.
Yeah.
And
at the end, he gets the second act.
He gets to be a kid again. It just like I said, it starts off good, but then it's like a train wreck. It just collapses. It's a nice looking train wreck, but it's still a train wreck.
I don't think I disliked it. I had an affinity for it. My only complaint was that I felt like it went on too long. And maybe Carmen wasn't necessary. But then again, maybe...
I mean, she was like a catalyst for, I guess, everything that was happening.
Right.
Because she was finding the money, and she was also causing the father to change his mind, and the wife to sort of like make her move. If it wasn't for her, none of like the final or the middle to the end of the movie would have happened. Well,
she kind of and she kind of prophesizes. She says she wants to turn them all against each other.
Yeah, she says that out loud to all of them.
Yeah. Or does she?
Which may or may not.
It was like in her head, because then it seemed like afterwards that scene happens again, but she answers differently. Or am I remembering that incorrectly?
No, she's very forthwith about what her intentions are, and everybody's just complete. It's like somebody cast like an honesty spell on everybody in this movie, and nobody is really reacting to what's being said, which I guess is another thing that's just kind of bothersome about it all, because that's like, okay, you could see that in a sort of like a certain type of comedy, but is this that type of comedy? This you keep using the word satire, and it's not really, because it's like, okay, you're using a historical figure, but we're not in historical times. We're not going over what happened during that period, really. This is something that takes place now. And to me, it just really didn't work. It It could have, which is the thing that's aggravating about it. Because like I said, it started out interesting, but none of the characters really made sense. Like the children, you get sort of an inkling of maybe their personalities, but not really. They're just money-hungry kids.
Right. They're vultures, yeah.
And the wife, you get a little bit more of her personality. She definitely has this sort of like, I guess her character is like, I was poor. I hooked up with this guy. He made me a queen. And now I want him and me to live forever, be young again in a new place, and get more power instead of living in this, like, where the hell even were they?
Yeah.
It was like this compound in the middle of nowhere.
You had to take a little boat too.
You had to take a little boat to get there, and the floors of the mansions were all torn up so that you could walk on the dirt. Mm. I'm wondering if that's something to do with being a vampire. I don't know. His bed was like that too, in his bedroom. Mm. And she wanted more. She wanted to be out in the city, I guess. Mm. And then when she realizes it's never going to happen because now he's with he's in love with Carmen and she's having the affair with the butler, she's like, you could turn me, but you have to kill him first. Mm. It's like you're not worthy enough to turn me into a vampire. It has to be him because he is the one that's like worthy. I am so good that it has to be him or somebody of his stature. Mm. And until you kill him, you are not of his stature and you are not worthy of turning me. Mm. And then he does it anyway, but does it take? Because she just gets killed with like a
blade,
a sword in the back.
Yeah.
Like she didn't even get her head chopped off.
No. Well, I think she had just turned, so she hadn't fed, so she wasn't really at vampire strength, I guess.
I don't know. I honestly don't. She didn't get teeth.
I think she got a little bit.
I didn't really see it that much. Like they were really emphasizing Carmen's teeth. Like they immediately she had vampire teeth.
Yeah.
Maybe some writing passes could have been done on this. But maybe a couple more passes or just, I guess, I don't know. To me, it didn't really feel like so much as character arcs as character leaps.
Possibly.
Suddenly there was just like different motivations present or different personalities present. It just was, like I said, it was kind of a mess. It just became sloppy. It was a sloppy story.
I don't know if I agree, but okay. That's fair, I guess. Why do you think Fyodor went after Carmen?
I guess because she was going to betray Pinochet, and he throughout all of it, he was still super loyal to Pinochet. He loved Pinochet. Mm-hmm. Even at the end, he puts his head on his lap like a dog. Mm. So seeing that,
his loyalty didn't save him.
Nope, because he also betrayed him too.
True.
Yeah.
And then you see the nuns coming at the end, like they were going to do anything.
Yeah, they get to walk through an empty house.
Yeah.
Nothing left in it. I did not. This film just disintegrated like as I was watching it.
I didn't dislike it. I actually liked it a lot. It wasn't the best thing I ever saw, but it wasn't the worst thing I ever saw. I thought it was also interesting how he equates these, like I said, these political presences as vampires. And you see it. They've taken the opportunity of these positions to enrich themselves.
Well, it's not like as though there's you don't know if this is happening anywhere else. It's just, it's him.
But historically speaking, I mean, look at our previous president. I mean, he took the office and basically enriched himself and his family.
True.
So with power comes money and corruption. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, nobody gets into politics and leaves it poor.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. I mean, we talk about Charlie Rangel, right?
God, ridiculous.
Bob Menendez.
Jeez. Yeah. I can't believe he is still there.
Yeah.
This is the second freaking time.
Yeah.
Second freaking time
he always gets voted in. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. All right. Well, this ain't a political show, so let's stop.
But I'm just using as an example that people that go into those positions basically turn because they're
just presented with all this wealth. It's like,
an opportunity to enrich themselves. So
I would really be appreciative if you could make it easier for me to dump garbage into the water.
Here.
Sure.
Here's this envelope of niceties for you.
Come to this party. There'll be prostitutes there.
Oh my God. When he said that to the wife at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, there was, you know what? There were some funny little bits of dialogue, like that little exchange between him and his wife.
You old
prostitute. Except in Spanish, which is just much better.
Yeah. So sexy.
Even though I don't really speak Spanish, I definitely heard puta right there. All right, I think I've spoken enough about this.
All right, I guess you are going to give it a lower score. I still think there's merit here. I think that for people that grew up knowing about the history of Chile, this might resonate with them, or people that even still live in Chile or Chileans. The director is of Chilean descent, so and born in Chile. So this is obviously a project that's near and dear to him. I'm sure it's
I gotta be honest though.
Conversation, because again, like I said, there are people that still worship at the altar of Pinochet, and there are others that are like, no, he was a monster.
I kind of don't even know what side the director is coming on in this one, because spoiler, Pinochet gets to live an entirely other life, and he's like sort of like this doddering old man. He's never portrayed as, I mean, as a young man, yeah, but then as he gets old, it's sort of like, are you trying to make us feel sympathy for him or something? It's like, no, this is, I don't know, that maybe that's another reason why I dislike this. I hate when they take especially with like a historical figure, and then this is just sort of like an offshoot of him, and and it doesn't matter if he's not being treated horribly. No, treat those characters that deserve to be treated horribly because of what they've done, and treat them horribly. Don't make him this doddering old man who falls in love with a young girl, and then, what is he, betrayed now? And he just, I get to be a young man again. Yay. Fuck that. Yeah. He should have been like horribly mutilated by the end of that movie, screaming and begging for death, and just, all right, you get to be immortal, but you get to be immortal as a writhing husk in a pit somewhere or something like that. Just desserts. Yeah. And so I don't. Yeah, that's another thing that bothered me. I don't recall what it was, but I'm pretty sure we saw something else not too long ago where it was sort of like that, and that kind of bothered me too. I forgot what the hell it was though.
Animal Kingdom?
No, because I think it was about like an actual person that deserved to be punished.
I don't remember then.
Yeah. Anyway.
And yet Kissinger has outlived them all.
Yeah.
Life isn't fair.
Anyway, right. I would give this a 4.
A 4? I don't think it's that bad.
5 is average. 4 is I don't like it. So it's a 4. It's a 4. It started out pretty good, but the story just collapsed. It really just, I don't know, it was like a house of cards. You were building something nice, and then it just all fell apart.
I disagree. I think it's worth a watch. I love the cinematography. There's something about black and white that just elevates a movie to a different stratosphere. It's a really pretty film. The costuming on this was really great. I laughed my butt off with the little flying count.
Oh, yeah, there's some dodgy special effects there.
Yeah, I thought that was really funny. I think when Carmen gets on her flight kick, that also was kind of funny to me.
That looked better, though.
It did.
That was actually her on like a crane or wires.
Yeah, for sure.
The flying through the city with the count was
horrible.
That was some seriously like Flash Gordon level flying effects. You. I swear it really just looked like a person who was standing, and then they just tilted him 90 degrees, and he's flying between buildings.
It's so ominous too, with the cape and everything billowing, right?
Yeah, he looked like you have no idea what I'd be talking. He looked like M. Bison from Street Fighter. His little cap and his cape. Yeah. And of course you get the wonderful closed captioning, cape fluttering. There's a lot of that. Flashed on the screen.
I also got a kick out of the narrator, who I will not divulge.
That was another thing that annoyed me too.
Really?
Yeah. It was like you have a narrator in a movie, and then suddenly it's just like, oh, and it's a character now too. It was.
I didn't mind that.
That's just introduced in the third act of the movie. It was just.
I didn't mind that. But
that bothers
again,
you don't introduce a major character that late in the movie.
I think you can do whatever the hell you want as long as you write a good script. I think
there we go.
As long as you write a good script. You. I think this was a decent script. I don't think it wasn't Flash Gordon.
It wasn't Flash Gordon, but
I think I gave Flash an 8. I would give this film, I think, a 7.5. I think from where it starts to where it ends, it's an interesting kind of retelling of history using vampires. Although it was funny because it was like these guys are just walking around in the sunlight. So how is this a thing? Because now you're going against vampire lore.
They're making their own versions of vampires, really. I think.
Yeah.
No, there is no. As time goes on, it feels like there's less and less adherence to the classic vampire rules.
Yeah.
Now they're walking around in daylight. They're getting mutant powers. They can turn into animals. Maybe they don't turn into animals.
And for some reason, he aged.
He was able to have children.
Yeah.
So he wasn't technically dead ever.
Yeah.
He wasn't like undead. He was just an organism that lived for a long time due to. And it wasn't really so much the blood as eating hearts.
Well, the blood, but also I think rejuvenation came from the hearts. At least that's what was said in the film.
Yeah.
Because that was the wife's plan. You're going to turn me and we're going to feast on this blood. And then we're going to rejuvenate, get young, and then move to Europe and start this cycle all over again.
Yeah.
What did you think of the children?
There could have been one child. It wasn't.
Well, historically, he had 5 kids.
All right, so I guess that explains why there were 5 of them. But it wasn't like as though any of them had real personalities.
I think some of their personalities came through the interviews. I mean, you don't get too much of them, but at the same time, I think you get an idea at basically.
Did they even have names? Because when the captioning would come on, it would just be like Child 2.
That's true. No, they had names. I think when they were talking to each other, they said their names, but it went by pretty quick. I'm not really familiar. I don't really remember Pinochet's children's names, but anyway.
I'm just talking about in the context of the movie.
I don't remember. No. They do say each other, like they would say their names, but it wasn't often enough for me to even remember to pick it up. But I also thought it was interesting how, I mean, there's a line in the film where I think Pinochet is talking to Carmen where he basically says, I wanted to provide for my kids because they don't know how to work. Right. Yeah. And that definitely comes through, like the greediness. Like I think one daughter says to the other daughter, oh, your inheritance kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
and how that one daughter who I guess
organized it,
organized the whole thing. She was like, this is for me. This thing was given to me.
And they also say, like for one of the sons, it's like, you mean we're not getting money?
Right.
And he's like, they're like, the only reason why we said that he was handing out stuff was so you would come.
Right.
Because he wouldn't have come otherwise.
Right. So in that respect, you get the sense of how, I mean, I don't know historically, I never really read up on the Pinochet's children, but here they're portrayed as just these vile, greedy bastards.
And simple-minded. They're kind of idiots, all of them.
Yeah. Anyway,
I'd say skip it.
I don't know. I'd say check it out. I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting retelling of historical facts. So, and then again, using vampirism as a.
That's the thing. It's not really that it's not really that movie. You're not retelling facts, but you're not retelling Pinochet's history with the fact that he's a vampire. You're just saying, oh, and he was a vampire, and now this is what's happening now today that he's still alive and not dead all this time. Mm-hmm. There was no, aside from his really old past, there's not really any flashbacks to any revolutions that he quelled or anything. The only real flashback you see is him brutally murdering that prostitute and Marie Antoinette getting her head chopped off.
And when he's in the military and you get the sense of, when the narrator's telling the story and he's doing his oath or whatever, that this is the beginning of him coming into power and becoming this leader.
But none of that had to do with him being a vampire at all.
No, it didn't. But I'm just saying that they allude to parts of that very briefly, to parts of that part of his life. But it's done very briefly because I think here the crux of the story is to portray him I guess in a sort of sympathetic light, but also
another reason why I dislike this movie.
But also to highlight the fact that he wasn't this grandiose figure. He was a monster, which you correlate the vampirism, and also a thief.
Mm-hmm. All
right. You say pass. I say check it out. All right. Agree to disagree. Mm-hmm. And you, the viewer, can make your own choice here.
Yes.
And that's it from us. And we will bid you all a
good night.
You're wrong, by the way.
No, I'm not.